there's a group of harmfully distracted people. They spend all their time studying Hadith, that is, attending audition sessions where Hadiths are recited, collecting many narrations of Hadiths, and seeking out obscure and short chains of transmission. An average member of this group is primarily concerned with traveling all over the land and meeting old teachers so that he may say, "I am the one who has the most narrations from so-and-so," or "I saw so-and-so," or "I have chains of transmission that no one else has." They are harmfully distracted in several ways, including 1. They are like asses carrying books.
The example of those who were given the Torah, then failed to uphold it, is like the donkey carrying great works of literature. Miserable, indeed, is the example of people who rejected God's revelations. God does not guide the wicked people.
They do not devote their attention to understanding the meanings of hadiths. Their knowledge is very limited. All they do is transmit hadiths, mistakenly thinking that this is sufficient for them. 2. Since they don't understand the meaning of what they teach, they don't act upon it. Moreover, when they happen to have an understanding of some aspects of it, they often still don't act upon it. 3. They fail to possess the knowledge transmitted on the Prophet's authority, the knowledge that every Muslim is required to possess, the knowledge that is understanding how to treat what ails the heart. Instead, they preoccupy themselves with gathering multiple chains of transmission and seeking the shortest ones. But these preoccupations are unnecessary for them. 4. The following mode of harmful distraction most characterizes our contemporaries. They do not uphold the most basic standards of learning hadith by listening to its recitation. Listening to a hadith, even if it has no benefit by itself, is important for affirming that hadith, since understanding comes after affirmation and action comes after understanding. The first step is listening to a hadith, then understanding it, then memorizing it, then acting upon it, and finally spreading the word. But these guys ignore most of these steps, limiting themselves to listening. They've even abandoned the true meaning of listening. And so, you'll often see a boy attending an old teacher's teaching session. While the teacher's hadith is being read aloud in his presence, the old teacher sleeps and the boy plays. Then, they write down the boy's name in the audition notice. When the boy grows old, people go out of their way to listen to hadiths on his authority. Adults who attend teaching sessions are often careless. They don't listen, don't pay attention, and don't record things accurately in their mind. Often they'll get distracted by conversation or by jotting something down. The old teachers, whose traditions are read aloud to them in their presence, don't notice or recognize if something is read wrongly or inaccurately. All of this is ignorance and harmful distractedness, since the basic principle of hadith is to listen to it directly from God's messenger, to memorize it as it was heard, and to narrate it as it was memorized. The narration is done from memorization, and the memorization is from listening. If you are unable to listen to the report from God's messenger, then you should hear it from his companions or their successors. When you listen to a report from a transmitter, it becomes as if you listen to it from God's messenger. May God protect him and grant him peace. And so, you should pay attention so that you may listen and memorize. Then, you should narrate as you have memorized, and you should memorize as you have listened, insomuch that you don't change a single letter of the original hadith, and so that if someone else changes a single letter or makes a mistake, you'll identify the mistake. There are 2 ways for you to commit things to memory. One is to memorize things by heart and make them permanent by mentioning them often and by repeating them, just as you would memorize something that you hear. The other way is to write down what you hear, then to proofread what you've written, and to make sure that nobody gets his hand on it and makes changes to it. When going by this way, you must always keep your notebook with you or safely stored away. For if someone other than you were to get his hand on it, he may make changes to it, and unless you've memorized the text, you will not notice the changes. You should remember the text by heart, or with a written aid that will serve as a reminder of what you have heard, and that will help protect you from unwanted changes and deviations. But let's say you don't memorize the text of a teacher by heart or with a written aid, and you hear some random sounds during the teaching session, and you leave the teaching session and you encounter a copy of that teacher's hadiths, and you granted that this copy's contents may differ from the copy that you heard even by a single letter. In such a case, you may not say that you heard this book. After all, you do not know if you ever heard its contents. Moreover, you may have heard something that is different from what's in this book, even by one word. Since you have not memorized this text by heart, or with an accurate and reliable written aid which you may compare with other copies, then how can you know that you have heard it? For God, exalted be He, said, "Do not follow what you don't know." But these days all the teachers say, "We heard everything that's in this book." They say this, even when they have not met our requirements for proper memorization. This is a blatant lie on their part. The most basic requirement for listening to a hadith is that you hear all of it, while memorizing it to some degree, so that you'll be able to detect changes. Were you allowed to write down hadiths that were heard by a little boy or someone not paying attention, or someone sleeping, or someone distracted by copying? Then you'd be allowed to write down what was heard by a baby in his crib or a lunatic. Then, when the baby would reach maturity, or the lunatic would revert to sanity, you could listen to hadiths from them. Yet everyone agrees that this is prohibited. Were that permitted, then it would be permitted to write down hadiths heard by a fetus in the womb. However, you do not write down the hadiths heard by a baby in his crib, because he cannot understand and cannot commit things to memory. Therefore, a child who plays around, or someone not paying attention, or someone distracted from listening by copying, also cannot understand and cannot commit things to memory. Some ignoramus may be so audacious as to say, "You may write down hadiths heard by a baby in his crib, but you may not write down those heard by a fetus in the womb." And he may justify this by drawing a distinction between fetuses who cannot hear anything and babies who can hear things. How is this helpful for the baby, who is supposed to be transmitting the hadith, not the sound? If such a baby ever becomes a teacher, let him be content with saying, "When I came of age, I was told that as a baby I attended a teaching session in which hadiths were taught. The sound of these hadiths made contact with my ears, while I could not understand what this sound was." Of course, everyone agrees that this form of teaching is not valid. What is more, it is a blatant lie.